His name was Jeffrey Dahmer. On the outside, he looked like a polite, bookish guy, but inside, he was a demon in human form. He just happened to read in the paper about a good-looking male student who had recently died. Then, in the middle of the night, he took a shovel to the cemetery, dug up the coffin, and slept with the corpse. There was nothing he wouldn't dare to do. He even murdered his close friend right in a hotel room, stuffed the body into a suitcase, and snuck it back to hide in his grandma's basement. He believed that the finest delicacies often required the simplest preparation, so he wrapped the victim's head in plastic wrap and stashed it in his dad's old photo box. When he was bored, he'd take it out, gaze at it, and sip on some booze. In just a few short years, he raped and interacted with dozens of men. He would interact with the victims' bellies, taking out their insides and stashing them in the fridge to eat later. He saved the leftover bones in a box. As time went on, frozen meat no longer satisfied his twisted desires. He started using a 216-liter drum to preserve the bodies. Even more disturbing, he photographed the entire gruesome process to fuel his sick fantasies. His horrific acts shocked the entire nation. The notorious name Jeffrey Dahmer has become a terrifying obsession for many. But perhaps all those barbaric crimes stem from his unfortunate childhood. Let's call him Jeffrey for now. From a young age, Jeffrey had a distinct personality with few friends. Every time he came home from school, he found his younger brother neglected alone in the living room, unattended. His mother suffered from crippling anxiety, taking handfuls of tranquilizers daily, and even tried to end her life right there in their house. Every time the ambulance came, his dad had to explain to the doctors that his mom was just faking it because this happened all the time. But really, his mom only did it because his dad was always giving her the cold shoulder, and she suspected he had a girlfriend on the side. That day, Jeffrey's parents were fighting again. His dad angrily left and didn't come back for days. Jeffrey pleaded, "Dad, I'm begging you, please don't go." "Jeff, Dad's only going to be gone for 3 days." With no one to play with, Jeffrey took a jar down to the riverbank to catch gobies. He spent the whole day lost in his little world. On the day of the school celebration, while all the other kids brought apples for their teachers, Jeffrey brought a jar full of gobies. His teacher didn't understand why he brought her gobies, but the other kids were fascinated, so she gave them to the children. When school was over, Jeffrey saw this and felt down. He had caught those gobies himself to give to the teacher, but she gave them to the kids who always bullied him. He felt deeply hurt. He followed the kids to their homes, snuck in, and stole back the jar of gobies. Then, Jeffrey went back to the riverbank where he often played and poured a whole jar of acid in, killing all the gobies. But maybe what turned Jeffrey from a weird kid into an extremist was thanks to some major help from his dad. That day, while cleaning up the basement, Jeffrey's dad found a dried-up dead mouse. Jeffrey wasn't grossed out at all. He was curious, touched the mouse, and asked his dad how it died. His dad looked at the body, pointed to a hole in the mouse's head, and explained that this mouse was bitten by another animal. It managed to escape and crawled into their basement, eventually dying there. Jeffrey asked again, how could it still run if its head had a hole in it? Seeing Jeffrey, who was usually quiet, showing such interest in death, his dad then told him a story from his school days. He told Jeffrey that animal brains are very resilient. Back in school, he and his professor did an experiment where they cut off a frog's head and then stuffed cotton into it. The headless frog tried to use its hands to get the cotton out of its head. Even with the head detached from the body, it still knew to do that. Isn't that amazing, son? After hearing that, Jeffrey became even more fascinated. Whenever he had free time, Jeffrey would ask his dad to drive him around to pick up roadkill, which they would bring home to dissect. The two of them spent entire days engrossed in this activity. Jeffrey not only learned how to gut animals, but also became familiar with many internal organs. A few years later, Jeffrey was a bit older. He particularly loved his anatomy class in school, while showing no interest in other subjects. Whenever a classmate criticized anatomy, he would get angry and argue back. "Shut up, Sherry. Anatomy is my favorite." After class, the teacher even praised Jeffrey. "You did very well today, Jeff. I can see you were very focused." But then, today the boy made a request that surprised the teacher. He wanted to take the little pig home to continue practicing anatomy. The teacher was stunned. In his 22 years of teaching, this was the first time he had encountered a student with such an unusual request. Seeing that Jeffrey seemed very interested, the teacher agreed. After school, Jeffrey even invited a friend over to dissect a piglet together, but his friend firmly refused. "You've got to be kidding me. I don't want to get eaten by you." Jeffrey was totally confused. He'd gone through so much trouble to get that piglet. So why didn't his friend like it? Jeffrey went home feeling down, only to get some terrible news from his dad. His mom had filed for divorce that day. Hearing this, Jeffrey didn't react much, just worriedly asked if he would stay with his dad or mom, since he was closer to his dad. His dad didn't answer directly, but it was clear he'd have to live with his mom. Just then, his dad caught a whiff of the piglet and asked, "What's that smell?" "It's my piglet, Dad." His dad rubbed his head while speaking, and the boy didn't realize how much damage that praise could do. After giving Jeffrey a few instructions, his dad left the house. A few days later, his mom also moved out, taking his younger brother with her. She felt that Jeffrey was always holed up in his room, studying dead bodies. He used to do that with his father, and now it was the same. He never paid any attention to his mother. Just like that, Jeffrey, who already had no friends, felt even more abandoned. Alone in the empty house, he was consumed by loneliness, and he started buying beer at the supermarket. He'd get drunk and laugh foolishly, talking to himself in the living room, wiggling around in front of a mirror, and slapping his butt. He even took a whole bunch of beer to school one day. "Jeff, you're not going to share a can with your teacher?" Jeffrey casually drank beer right in class in front of everyone. Luckily, his homeroom teacher knew about Jeffrey's family situation and promptly stepped in to counsel him, advising him to focus on his studies. Thanks to that, Jeffrey managed to graduate high school. In the group photo of the honor students, Jeffrey wasn't supposed to be included, but he snuck in the back, stood with the other students for the picture, and then happily walked off. Unfortunately, a few sharp-eyed students noticed Jeffrey, and they scribbled over his head in the photo. Jeffrey was furious when he saw that. He just wanted a photo with the other students. That day, Jeffrey drove out for some fresh air. On the road, he happened to meet a handsome, muscular guy who even greeted him in a friendly way. Jeffrey stared at him without blinking. Having never had friends before, Jeffrey felt a bit of warmth from that guy and even felt a flutter. The next day, Jeffrey secretly took a bat, went back to that road, and hid in the bushes waiting. He planned to knock the guy out and take him home to enjoy. Before long, the muscular guy jogged by. Jeffrey immediately jumped out, holding the bat. The guy obediently followed Jeffrey home. To treat his crush, Jeffrey brought out a bottle of fine wine he had been saving for 2 years, not daring to drink it. Just as the two were about to clink glasses, it turned out that it was all just a fleeting fantasy of Jeffrey's. Since this was his first time doing something like this, Jeffrey couldn't go through with it. So, the muscular guy got scared and ran away. However, Jeffrey didn't give up. He went back to that road every day to look for his prey. Then one day, he got lucky. An unlucky guy practically served himself up to Jeffrey. Looking in his rearview mirror, Jeffrey saw that he was exactly his type and immediately stopped the car. It turned out this guy wanted a ride to a concert that started at 7:30 p.m. Jeffrey agreed right away and even acted all gallant, flirting with him. Jeffrey checked his watch and saw it was still early, so he took the guy back to his place. To warm up with some weightlifting, having a handsome guy around really motivated Jeffrey to work out. He was like a tiger unleashed, knocking out 800 push-ups in no time. Time flew by, and it was almost 7:30. The guys started signaling Jeffrey to get going, but Jeffrey wanted to stretch out their time alone a bit longer, so he grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, lying that they'd leave after finishing them. Then, right at this moment, Jeffrey couldn't control himself any longer and lunged at the guy. He felt utterly disgusted and cursed at Jeffrey harshly. "Get lost, you damn freak." Hearing that, Jeffrey became extremely angry. He thought to himself, "If I can't have him, then no one can." And he grabbed a dumbbell and beat the guy repeatedly. After that, he dragged the unfortunate man's body into the shed and proceeded to interact with and dismember it. But before that, Jeffrey did some sick things with the corpse. The horrific scene is best left to your imagination. Next, Jeffrey intentionally burned the bones until they were charred so he could crush them with a hammer into powder and scatter them around the house. No one could understand what he was thinking. Maybe Jeffrey thought that by doing this, He wouldn't feel lonely anymore, and he would always have a ghost to keep him company. Not long after, Jeffrey's dad came back to visit his son, bringing a woman with him. Seeing the house in ruins, he realized that his ex-wife had neglected Jeffrey for a long time. He thought it wasn't good to leave Jeffrey home alone like this, so he decided to enlist Jeffrey in the army. But this decision inadvertently helped Jeffrey learn another skill for his crimes. Because Jeffrey was a medic, he had access to many types of drugs. But Jeffrey was particularly interested in a certain type of sleeping drug. He heard the training officers say that this drug worked quickly, making people fall asleep immediately. Jeffrey then found a way to sneak into the medical room and steal a handful. He even used his comrades as guinea pigs, drugging them into unconsciousness and then performing depraved acts. A few years later, Jeffrey was discharged from the army. His father took him to live at his grandmother's house. That evening, his grandmother showed him a wooden box that belonged to his father. Inside were a bunch of old photos of his dad. Little did she know that Jeffrey would later use this very box to store the heads of dead people. We'll get to that later. The next day, Jeffrey went to apply for a job at a fast food restaurant. Since the owner required employees to wear white shirts while working after his shift, Jeffrey went to a clothing store to buy a shirt. But while he was paying, he suddenly noticed that the mannequin in the back was even sexier than the muscular guy from the day before. An idea popped into Jeffrey's head. He stealthily slipped into the fitting room when the staff weren't looking and quietly waited there. Soon enough, the store turned off the lights and closed up. Making sure no one was around, Jeffrey came out of the fitting room, dragging the mannequin he liked along with him back home. He treated it like a lover, placed it on the bed, and fully enjoyed those fiery curves. But eventually, his grandma found out about it. She threw the mannequin out in the trash. Jeffrey went off on her, yelling his head off. That night, he went to an amusement park and chugged a few beers to blow off some steam at the game. But he just couldn't shake it off. Suddenly, Jeffrey started hallucinating. The buff guy he'd killed before appeared right in front of him. Seeing the man of his dreams, Jeffrey felt a surge of energy and started doing obscene things right there in front of everyone. And of course, he ended up at the police station, getting his picture taken, fingerprinted, and locked up for 24 hours. This epic tale quickly spread all over the small town. Jeffrey also got canned from his job at the fast food joint. With no other choice, Jeffrey had to find a new gig at a clinic. His daily job was to measure blood pressure and take blood samples from patients. After all, he had learned this during his time in the military, so it was like an old trade to him. But if you think he was trying to go straight, you're dead wrong. After work, Jeffrey started bringing patients' blood bags home. He'd snip a little hole in the bag and take a big swig. Now, don't freak out at this point. Maybe Jeffrey just thought he was low on some nutrients and needed a boost. And just like that, a few years went by and Jeffrey stumbled upon a new promised land. He started hitting up bars. The first time he went to a bar, Jeffrey was over the moon. Turns out, there were so many buff guys here. Jeffrey's innocent looks quickly caught the eye of a male escort. The two were flirting with each other until the bar closed. As they were leaving, Jeffrey made his intentions known to the guy. Just come with me, and you can do whatever you want. So the gigolo took Jeffrey to a place called a bathhouse. You can think of this as a place where people in the industry work. The owner here really knows how to please his customers, not only providing all the necessary tools, but also giving a thumbs up and a heart sign to the clients. Once in the room, the gigolo launched his attack. After 60 minutes of grinding, carrying the team and blasting monsters, Jeffrey finally shattered the gigolo's crystal. Even though he was exhausted, Jeffrey didn't want to stop. He wanted to play another round, but the gigolo said he had to work tomorrow and couldn't play anymore. He left the game, leaving Jeffrey all alone, feeling incredibly lonely again. The next day, Jeffrey went back to the bar to find a new teammate, using the same flirtatious lines in the same place. But this time, Jeffrey played the role of the decoy. After taking a man to a room, Jeffrey went to the reception desk and bought 2 vodkas. Then he took the sleeping pills he'd stolen back when he was in the army, used the ashtray on the table, crushed them into powder, dropped it into the drinks and stirred. This way, Jeffrey could play all night with the other man, but the bathhouse owner quickly found out, and it seriously damaged the bathhouse's reputation. To protect his business, the owner blacklisted Jeffrey, refusing to serve him. Jeffrey was furious. He had to go to expensive hotels after that. The other man didn't see why they needed to go to such a fancy place and asked Jeffrey why they didn't go to the bathhouse. Jeffrey had to explain that the place wasn't clean. In the luxurious room, with soft music playing, the other man couldn't help but dance, while Jeffrey was in the bathroom, mixing his special drink. But today he messed up, accidentally giving the other man the drug-free drink and taking the spiked one himself. Jeffrey felt dizzy and slapped himself in the face to try to stay awake. Before passing out, he managed to mix the other guy with another drink. But when he woke up the next morning, Jeffrey was stunned. His knuckles were all bruised. Turns out, he had beaten the other man to death right there in bed. Jeffrey tried pressing on the man's chest, wanting to wake him up, but it was too late. He'd stopped breathing a long time ago. Having no other choice, Jeffrey went out and bought a huge suitcase, stuffed the man's body inside, and dragged it down to his grandma's basement. Jeffrey interacted with the man's body like he dissected a piglet in the past. Even more disturbing, he kept the man's head in a wooden box his dad used to store old photos. A few days later, a foul smell from the basement reached his grandma's nose. Because she had trouble walking, she asked Jeffrey to go down there and check it out. Jeffrey made up an excuse to cover it up. Then, not only did he not wait, but he went further. Taking advantage of his grandma being asleep, Jeffrey brought men home, drugged them, carried them down to the basement, and interacted with them. But Jeffrey didn't know that his grandma had already found out about him bringing men home. Because of the mannequin incident from before, she decided not to interfere. But Jeffrey kept interacting with more and more people, and the stench from the basement grew stronger and stronger. One day, his grandma again told Jeffrey to go down there and find out what was causing it. Jeffrey kept trying to avoid it. Helpless, his grandma had to call Jeffrey's dad to come over and force Jeffrey to open the basement door. As soon as he walked in, Jeffrey's dad was startled by the saw on the table. He asked Jeffrey why he needed such a big saw for dissecting animals. Jeffrey replied that a bigger saw was easier to use. But right then, something black in the drain caught his dad's attention. He bent down, touched it with his finger, and almost passed out from the horrible stench. Jeffrey quickly explained that he was doing a chemistry experiment with animal flesh and skin. Jeffrey's dad knew this was his son's hobby, so he didn't question him further. Just warned Jeffrey not to make any more smells because his grandma couldn't stand it. Jeffrey behaved for a while, but then one day, he met a man whose car had broken down on the side of the road. Jeffrey offered to help. He made up an excuse to lure the man back to his place. But when they got there, the man saw Jeffrey making coffee, chatting about this and that, and not getting any tools to fix his car. He started arguing loudly with Jeffrey. The shouting woke up his grandma upstairs. The old woman listened silently. After being sweet-talked by Jeffrey for a while, the man agreed to have a cup of coffee first. Little did he know, Jeffrey had put drugs in the coffee. Soon enough, he started feeling dizzy and lightheaded, gradually losing consciousness. Just as Jeffrey was about to pounce on him for a kiss, his grandma, worried, came downstairs and saw the whole scene. She saw the man pass out and guessed Jeffrey was behind it. But she had no idea what Jeffrey was planning to do. To stop Jeffrey from causing trouble, his grandma covered the man with a blanket and decided to sit guard in the living room, waiting for him to wake up. Because Jeffrey used too much of the drug, the man still wasn't awake by the next morning. His grandma told Jeffrey to take him to the bus station and send him on his way. Jeffrey just told the driver some random place, and when they got there, the driver told the man to get off. He still wasn't fully conscious at this point and almost got hit by a car. Not long after, the man woke up and went to the police station to report what happened. The police came to Jeffrey's house to investigate. Jeffrey explained that he saw the man drunk and just let him crash for the night. His grandma, sitting nearby, knew Jeffrey was lying but didn't expose him. Then the police asked Jeffrey if he had seen any of the man's jewelry that might have fallen off. Jeffrey spaced out for a moment before remembering he had stolen it and put it on a severed hand in his collection. In the end, because they couldn't find any evidence, the police had to leave. The man was furious when he heard the outcome, but had to swallow his anger. The truth was that the police were more likely to believe a white guy than a black guy. After that, whenever he saw Jeffrey at the bar, he would expose Jeffrey's true nature to everyone. Jeffrey could only watch helplessly as potential victims were scared off by the man. But karma finally caught up to Jeffrey. One day, he had interacted with a 14-year-old boy but failed. Maybe the boy was in good health, so the drugs didn't have much effect, helping him escape from Jeffrey. Jeffrey planned to chase after the boy but saw his grandma watching from upstairs. The boy limped back home. His family immediately called the police. The next day, Jeffrey was arrested right at his workplace. This time, he had no way to deny it. The police here were also strange. Same incident. The first report, they just brushed it off. The second time, they finally took it seriously. In court, Jeffrey was sentenced to 1 year in prison. But what I didn't expect was that the judge was also a remarkable individual. The judge looked at Jeffrey and his dad and said that he was reminded of his grandson. The judge's grandson was once in a similar situation as Jeffrey, but that young man turned his life around and now runs a very successful car wash. The judge believes Jeffrey can do the same. Plus, Jeffrey currently holds a steady job. So, the judge decided to let Jeffrey out to work 40 hours a week. His workplace will also be required to keep his criminal status a secret. Even the clerk sitting next to him couldn't keep up with taking notes. It seems the judge thinks Jeffrey just made a temporary, foolish mistake. Giving him a chance to work can both help him rehabilitate and not ruin his future. Since he didn't have to go to jail until the next morning, Jeffrey's dad took him to his grandma's house for one last meal. He also told Jeffrey that after getting out of jail, he'd have to go live on his own. However, during the meal at grandma's, there's a detail that shows the dad's irresponsibility. Jeffrey's dad always opposes drinking. He saw Jeffrey's glass was almost empty, yet he automatically grabbed another bottle from the fridge and handed it to Jeffrey. Later, Jeffrey's grandma told his dad that Jeffrey had taken his wooden box, so his dad told Jeffrey to give it back. Jeffrey was reluctant because his treasure was still hidden inside, but his dad insisted. Jeffrey had to go upstairs to get the box, but he didn't expect his dad to follow him. Once in the room, Jeffrey quickly lied and said he couldn't find the key. His dad didn't believe him and suspected Jeffrey was hiding something shady inside. So he angrily went downstairs to get a knife to pry open the box. But this accidentally gave Jeffrey a chance to quickly move his treasure somewhere else. And just like that, Jeffrey got away with it. Soon after, Jeffrey's dad and stepmom left grandma's house. In the car, Jeffrey's dad cried and started thinking about when Jeffrey took the mannequin and grandma found out. About when Jeffrey acted inappropriately at the amusement park. He blamed himself for not paying attention to these things back then, so he could have stopped his son from harming that 14-year-old boy. Jeffrey's dad might think that way, but when it comes to actually doing something about it, he's got nothing. The next day, Jeffrey went to jail. Jeffrey's dad wrote a letter to the judge, saying he believed Jeffrey would change if he stopped drinking, and he hoped the judge could intervene somehow. He wanted the judge to create an opportunity for Jeffrey to join educational programs and get counseling in jail to help his son. A year later, Jeffrey got out of jail. Jeffrey's dad asked him if he had seen a therapist or gotten any help inside. No, they just left me alone. Jeffrey's answer made his dad's face change. He told Jeffrey to go somewhere else and then snuck into a corner, feeling heartbroken for his son. But his decision to have Jeffrey live alone didn't change. He rented an apartment for Jeffrey to live on his own, and this allowed Jeffrey to completely let loose. That year, Tony's mom endured 8 agonizing hours of labor to bring him into the world. He was born healthy and should have had a beautiful life. But tragically, during a bout of pneumonia, the pediatrician prescribed a course of antibiotics that left him deaf and mute. A few years later, Tony grew up. Luckily, he was a cheerful and lively kid, not at all discouraged by his disabilities. Instead, he went out to find work to support himself. Even though he couldn't hear, he still went to bars to dance. But ironically, he ran into the perverted killer Jeffrey there. Looking at Jeffrey's smile here, you can probably guess that Jeffrey had already saved a spot for Tony in his fridge. That's right, Jeffrey ate him. Tony noticed Jeffrey was interested in him, so he went over to start a conversation. Jeffrey said he liked Tony's dancing. Tony didn't pay attention to what he said and took out a pen and paper from his pocket to communicate. Tony thought he would be rejected, but surprisingly, Jeffrey not only didn't reject him, but also happily danced with him. Tony was moved and hugged Jeffrey tightly. This made Jeffrey, a lonely person, feel a warmth he had never felt before. And when he was about to slip Tony the drugs, Jeffrey hesitated and put them back in his pocket. Soon enough, Jeffrey and Tony officially became a couple. They went to take photos together. Tony posed, while Jeffrey took the pictures. And this gave Jeffrey a new hobby. They went to restaurants together, writing down what they wanted to say on paper. Jeffrey thoughtfully asked Tony if communicating this way was tiring. Tony told Jeffrey that he was worth it. The two had a romantic afternoon together. Not long after, Jeffrey took Tony home, and as soon as they got inside, Jeffrey's old habits kicked in again. That is, pouring a drink for his prey. But when he looked back at Tony, he put the stuff back in his pocket. He couldn't bear to do it. Besides, he and Tony were deeply in love at the moment. After that, the two played video games. They played and fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, Tony woke up and said he had to go to work. When Jeffrey heard that, he wasn't happy and asked, "When will you come see me again?" Tony said, "I'll come again next week." This answer made Jeffrey uneasy. "How do I know you'll come?" While Tony was packing his things, Jeffrey opened a drawer, took out a hammer, hid it behind his back, and slowly walked toward him. Just as Jeffrey was about to bring the hammer down, Tony quickly wrote a note promising Jeffrey that he would come back next week, placed Jeffrey's hand on his chest, and then gave him a passionate kiss. This is what made Jeffrey unable to go through with killing Tony. But not long after, Tony's mom realized her son was missing and went to the police station to report it. She felt like the police weren't doing anything to find Tony, so she took it upon herself to put up missing person flyers all over the city, even going to the park to ask people for help. Jeffrey saw everything. He even donated $100 to Tony's mom. Seeing Tony's mom in so much pain, Jeffrey deeply regretted what he did. It turned out that day after leaving Jeffrey's place, Tony realized he had forgotten his keys in the room, so he went back to get them. Just thinking about Tony leaving him, Jeffrey lost control and immediately killed Tony. He even cut up his flesh to caress it, then put a frying pan on the stove, added oil, and put the fresh meat in, sprinkling some pepper and frying it until it was golden brown on both sides. Jeffrey savored his lover with the most elegant gestures. The next night, Jeffrey went out hunting again. He lured a young boy from the street back to his place for $50, saying he just needed the boy to cooperate and take a few pictures. After drugging the boy unconscious, Jeffrey placed him on his lap and muttered some sick words. Then he grabbed an electric drill. Jeffrey wanted to turn the boy into a zombie. He drilled a hole in the boy's head. This was the frontal lobe surgery method his dad had taught him when he was little. A while later, the boy woke up and, seeing Jeffrey wasn't there, stumbled out to escape. When Jeffrey came back with some booze, he saw the police, neighbors, and the boys standing in front of the apartment. The neighbors reported the boy's condition to the police, saying he was rambling and not in his right mind. But Jeffrey said the boy was his boyfriend. They just had a drunken argument, and he ran out. Even though the neighbors suggested taking the boy to the hospital for a checkup, the police ultimately believed Jeffrey, a white man, thinking the boy was just drunk. They helped Jeffrey take the boy back inside. Once inside, the police just took a quick look around and didn't notice another body under the bed. After giving Jeffrey a few words of advice, they left. As soon as the police were gone, Jeffrey grabbed the electric drill again. The sound of drilling went through the vent and reached the ears of his black neighbor. Hearing the noise, she thought the boy might have been killed, so she called the 2 officers earlier. What follows is the actual audio recording of that call from back then. Glenda asked the police if they had confirmed the boy was safe, and if they had checked whether the boy was a minor because they had seen him catching earthworms on the street before, and he seemed like a minor. But the police said they had already confirmed everything, and this was just a matter between homosexuals. They told Glenda not to worry and hung up. But the next day, while watching TV, Glenda heard Jeffrey's voice from the next room again. It sounded like he was chopping something. She got curious, went closer to listen, and suddenly smelled a terrible, disgusting odor that almost made her faint. Glenda went to knock on Jeffrey's door. When Glenda asked about it, Jeffrey said it might be the smell of barbecue and that he was trying out a new recipe. He also promised Glenda he would get rid of it soon and wouldn't do it again. During the day, Glenda was coming back from the market when she ran into a new tenant in the hallway. This man was very friendly and offered to help Glenda carry her heavy groceries home. Glenda kindly warned him that the area wasn't very safe and that he should be cautious about interacting with strangers. She said that most people in the building were nice, except for a few who were a bit off. But right after she said goodbye to the man, he ran into Jeffrey. "You're the new guy, right?" The man, smiling, said, "I'm Dean." Glenda could only pray that he would be safe. That night, Glenda was woken up again by cries for help and the sound of a struggle coming from Jeffrey's room. She immediately got up and called the police, but every time, the police just brushed it off. They said that since the caller didn't witness the incident firsthand, they wouldn't come immediately. Still worried, the next day, Glenda and the landlord went to check if the new tenant was still alive, but no matter how much they knocked, no one answered. During the lease period, the landlord also didn't have the right to open Jeffrey's door. Glenda had to complain to the landlord about the awful smell coming from Jeffrey's room, saying it was affecting her life. The landlord, after smelling the odor himself, went to see Jeffrey and told him to move out within 30 days. Jeffrey was furious. He figured it must have been Glenda who snitched. Jeffrey went to find Glenda, begged her to withdraw her complaint, and even brought her food to try to win her over. Who knows if the meat in the meal was actually pork or not, but Glenda firmly refused to eat it and didn't withdraw her complaint. Jeffrey couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't beat her in a fight, so he had to go back defeated. However, Jeffrey still didn't stop. Every night, Glenda would hear cries for help and the sound of chopping meat. Once again, she tried calling the police. "Can you please go inside and check?" "What are you talking about? Why don't you go in and check?" Ms. Glenda shared her thoughts. She believed there was a murder happening. The police said they would send someone over but didn't ask for the location, which made Ms. Glenda upset. Were they planning to brush it off again? "Don't lie to me anymore. You guys never came. I've called 50 times already." The police remained indifferent. "You better calm down, you hear? If you keep calling, how can other people get through to us? 911 is a public resource. I'm telling you someone's been murdered. Don't you understand?" Glenda was once again ignored by the police. After that, Glenda went near Jeffrey's door again to see if she could hear anything. That day, Jeffrey's fridge was empty again, so he went out to a bar to hunt for prey. At this point, the neighbor opened her door and confronted Jeffrey. "The stench from your place is making it impossible for me to live." But Jeffrey didn't care because the neighbors had complained many times before and the police never did anything about it. Soon enough, Jeffrey lured a man from the bar back to his place with the promise of a $50 photo shoot. As soon as he walked in, the man noticed the dark room, plus the disgusting smell of dead bodies, and yet Jeffrey didn't even bother to open a window. The man, terrified, wanted to leave, so Jeffrey pulled out a knife and pointed it at him. "Try to leave." Jeffrey's demand was simple. He wanted the man to sit still on the bed and watch a horror movie with him. This was like adding fuel to the fire, making the fear in the man's heart grow even stronger. But Jeffrey's next action truly shattered the man's reality. Jeffrey slowly placed his hand on the man's chest and said, "Later, I'm going to eat you." Hearing this, the man's heart pounded. If he didn't run now, when would he? Wait until he lost his heart too. He panicked and hit Jeffrey on the head, then grabbed a lamp and smashed it over his head, taking the chance to escape. I'm not playing anymore. Jeffrey wasn't scared at all. Instead, he calmly closed the door and lit a cigarette to calm down. Before long, the man had brought the police back. As soon as they walked in, they were hit with a strong, foul odor. The cops started searching the room. They found some photos in Jeffrey's drawer. As the officers flipped through them, they looked disturbingly real. Seeing his crimes exposed, Jeffrey immediately ran away. Luckily, these two police officers were somewhat experienced. One searched the place, while the other stayed alert, keeping an eye on Jeffrey. Jeffrey was quickly overpowered and pinned to the ground. This time, Jeffrey's been caught by the law. Justice may be delayed, but it's never truly absent. The neighbor, Glenda, finally got her wish. She angrily scolded the police. "How many times did I tell you? You never investigated. Now look at what was in his house." You can probably guess what the police found. Soon after, Jeffrey's dad got a call to come down to the station. They asked about Jeffrey's situation. His dad explained that Jeffrey had surgery when he was 4 years old. Due to being given too much anesthesia, Jeffrey suffered brain damage. After that, Jeffrey was like a different person, but he never imagined that surgery could lead to something as terrible as this. At the trial, Jeffrey's dad tried to defend his son, saying Jeffrey had mental problems. He asked that Jeffrey not go to jail but get mental treatment at a hospital because there had been similar cases before. But in the end, he couldn't fight the pressure from the victims' families. Jeffrey was sentenced to life in prison. In prison, Jeffrey sometimes got letters from fans. They admired what Jeffrey did. They not only asked for his autograph, but also regularly sent him a lot of money. Jeffrey couldn't believe that in prison, without doing anything, he was making bank. Some fans even went to Jeffrey's apartment to recreate his masterpiece, taking pictures and posting them online. When this happened, Glenda and others would smash their cameras. But surprisingly, the camera smashing made the police show up quickly. Before, when Jeffrey was dismembering people in his apartment, the police were nowhere to be found. Jeffrey not only influenced many fans, but he also left a haunting shadow on those who lived in that apartment building. They were so scared that they had to drag their pillows and blankets out into the hallway to sleep together. Not long after, many of them moved out. The authorities decided to tear down the apartment building. On the day of the demolition, the image of Jeffrey still haunted Glenda, scaring her to death. But Jeffrey soon faced mortal danger in prison. While some people liked his masterpiece, others hated it. For example, this black man wanted to kill Jeffrey because Jeffrey had brutally murdered so many black people. That day, the first guard brought Jeffrey and another inmate to the gym to clean up. Then, the guard brought in the black man to help. Knowing that this black man had a grudge against Jeffrey and still doing that, it's clear the guard did it on purpose. Because Jeffrey was a murderer, everyone wanted him dead. They couldn't believe he only got a life sentence. Then, the guard left, leaving the three of them alone. Seeing this, Jeffrey understood it was a setup. He didn't run. He just calmly watched. Soon enough, the black man attacked and killed the other inmate. The reason was that the inmate had killed his wife and even slashed her face a few times. The black man thought he deserved to die, but compared to Jeffrey's crimes, he thought that was nothing. He believed that someone like Jeffrey shouldn't be allowed to live. Jeffrey didn't fight back. He even said, "Okay." Then the black man punched Jeffrey to the ground and grabbed a bar, hitting him hard on the head. Each hit made Jeffrey remember his wrongdoings until he was beaten to death by the black man. Soon after, Jeffrey's dad got the news that his son was dead. Seeing his son's battered body, he cried out in pain. Later, the authorities wanted to take Jeffrey's brain for research, but both Jeffrey's mother and father strongly objected. Before he died, Jeffrey wrote a will requesting his entire body be cremated, with no casket, no funeral, and no tombstone. Jeffrey was pretty smart. Even in death, he was worried people would dismember him, so he took precautions. Besides, the brain is also part of the body. Even if someone was a criminal, you still have to respect the deceased. In the end, with the firm insistence of Jeffrey's parents, the authorities agreed to destroy Jeffrey's brain. The end of the film shows pictures of the 17 victims murdered by Jeffrey. The whole story was because Jeffrey was influenced by the people around him. But going back to when Jeffrey's dad was questioned by the police, he said Jeffrey was a bit off after the surgery. Maybe like that. We can understand that the surgery made it hard for Jeffrey to connect with others. He then used extreme methods to possess them, gradually becoming dependent on those methods. And those methods were what Jeffrey's dad taught him. He dissected animals, made them into specimens, and collected them. It's just that Jeffrey applied it to humans. On top of that, due to the influence of his living environment, his dad would leave home when things got tough. His mom abandoned Jeffrey when things got hard, which gradually distorted Jeffrey's worldview. He believed that the living were untrustworthy. Only the dead could stay by his side, letting him do whatever he wanted. Ultimately, when he realized Jeffrey had problems, Jeffrey's dad should have taken real action to get Jeffrey treatment, not just write letters asking others to do it for him or just talk. The mannequin incident and the thing at the amusement park were already clear signals. But Jeffrey's dad not only didn't intervene, but also let Jeffrey go out and live alone. However, the police were also responsible. They not only didn't investigate missing persons, but also ignored Glenda's complaints. This made Jeffrey think the police wouldn't discover his wrongdoings. From there, he sank deeper into crime. The value of a movie lies in its reputation, but the value of a movie review lies in its insights. Today's story ends here. Thanks for watching. What did you think of this movie? Let me know in the comments below.